I'm Jimmy from Whole Sport, and today we're going to talk to you about tendon injuries and how we can be proactive in our training at home to reduce our risk of tendinopathies or tendon-related injuries, not only at this present moment in time, but how then, when we get back in that gym environment, will have reduced the possibility of those occurring. So tendons are what attaches our muscle to the bone. So they're a bit like the anchor, but they also double up as almost like a shock absorber, or like a shock absorber, or like a dampener, if you like, when we're doing stuff like jumping or landing. So when we're doing explosive movements, they enable us through sort of a stretch and retraction sort of mechanism to apply a little bit more force or be a little bit more explosive. Why that's important at the moment is, I'm sure if you've looked on social media, you'll have seen everybody jumping around their living rooms, their gardens. Loads of HIIT style workouts are really, really popular at the moment because people are just trying to do what they can at home, and normally that means as much intensity as possible, as quick as possible, get a real sweat on, and we're all gravy. Now the issue with that is it's really, really good, but if you're not accustomed or you're not familiar with that style of training, then potentially you're at a risk of experiencing these tendinopathies due to the increased loading or the change in stimulus of your workouts on the tendons. Tendons respond to change, so it could be that the flooring that you're used to is now changed, so you're working out on a laminated flooring. It could be that you're doing HIIT workouts every day as opposed to every other day or 3 times a week or whatever, or it could be quite simply that you're doing them and you've never done them before because it's what you've seen on social media and you're following along with that. It also, a lot of us now, we're going out for a lot more runs, okay, and I'm sure you might have heard potentially of runner's knee, or Achilles tendinopathies or tendonitis, and again they're stimulated to an increase in workload, so an increased load on those tendons, okay, and they simulate like an inflammation of the tendon, and then potentially, if they're not treated, can lead to a breakdown or degeneration of those tendinous tissues. So yeah, what we're going to talk about today is how we can fix them, and then how we can incorporate exercises into our training that will reduce the potential for us to experience these issues and make it easier when we then transition back into the gym. So tendons, there are 3 main ways that are commonly used to treat tendinopathies or to prevent tendinopathies, and that incorporates isometric, which is a static contraction, so you can get a maximal muscular contraction, which imposes the greatest pull on the anchor or the tendon, and as a result loads the tendon and can stimulate a healing response or a strengthening response. The other is eccentric, so again controlled, loaded eccentric contraction, so the lengthening of the muscle under tension, which again induces a pull on the tendon, which is what is required to stimulate the healing response or the repair to that tissue. And then the third one is a heavy slow, so again it's a heavy slow contraction, so it's a slow negative followed by a slow concentric. So for example, a squat, really, really slow down and then really, really slow back up. Reason for that is it reduces that stretch, that rapid stretch and pull on the tendon. It's controlled, and it's a controlled loading pattern. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take you through some exercises to help and to show you how you can incorporate those methods into your training to load the tendon. Now what I would say is the pattern of tendon injuries is quite a complicated one. So it might be you experience the pain when you're not training, and then as soon as you've warmed up and you've got going, the pain goes away. But then when you stop training again, the pain comes back and you think, that's odd. That's a common pattern with tendon injury, so that's how you can recognise it. And the reason why that is obviously the tendon, it doesn't have as good a blood supply as a muscle. So when we're at rest, there's a lot of pull from the muscle on the tendon, so it's not very warm, it's not got good blood supply. As we then start to warm up, the tendon becomes a little bit more compliant due to an increased blood supply and warmth of the tissue, and then it gets a bit more elastic. At that point, it's no longer as painful as it was previously. So we think, sweet, we're good to go, we crack on with our workout. and then we finish our workout and the pain comes back. Now the issue is, if we don't recognise that as the requirement for an intervention, then we can go through that repetitive cycle, and in turn it's going to get worse and worse and worse, and eventually that tendon is going to start to degenerate because it's going through that inflammatory cycle and it's not having the opportunity to heal. And at that point the pain will worsen and it will get constant. So depending on what stage you're at dictates how you go about it, or what you experience when you're doing these exercises. Now, it is normal when you do load a potentially pathological tendon to experience pain, and that's okay. We need that painful stimulus to promote healing or to promote repair and get the adaptation that we want. Now, what I would say there is just err on the side of caution. So the pain shouldn't go anything above sort of a 3 out of 10. If it does, then okay, we need to back off and maybe take some of the load off or simplify the exercise. And that's just something that you just need to be a little bit wary of. Don't push through excessive amounts of pain on these exercises. Hopefully that's a bit of a background information, a bit of explanation, and it's not been too difficult to understand. What we're going to do now is we're going to go on to the exercises, and as I say, you can incorporate these into your warm-up as a main focus if you like, or even in your cool down or in your off days, and I guarantee that if you do this,